install a JLT Series 3 cold air intake. And first start by removing the stock air intake. So the first thing you do is you come over, and there's a hose right here with some clamps. And you remove this hose right here. And there's a little clamp that you lift up to go around this ledge. Same thing with this. Next, you're going to need an 8mm socket wrench to loosen up the band around the intake on the throttle body. You're going to also need a 10mm socket wrench to remove this screw down in here. Next, you're going to need to take the air mass flow sensor off. That normally looks like this. You pull the red tab out, you push the black tab down, slides off. So next, we're going to go ahead and remove the stock air intake. Okay, so you're going to need a T20 torque screw to remove the air mass flow meter. Make sure you pay attention which direction you're inserting it. When you put it into the new cold air intake. So this direction is going to be forward. The air will be flowing this way. So once you've got the air mass flow meter ready to go, you're going to want to go ahead and install it into the new housing in the JLT Series 3 cold air intake. Now there's going to be Phillips screws to insert this one, to fasten this one with. Now you'll notice that there was a PVC pipe or tube leading from the engine to the air intake. So you're going to want to go ahead and pre-install the tube that came with the JLT Series 3, and just go ahead and work it onto this little nozzle here on the bottom before you put the cold air intake in, because it might be kind of tough to reach once it's installed. So now that you can see facing the intake direction, the air will flow in and pass through the airflow mass meter. Next, we're going to go ahead and install the heat shield. So the heat shield just mounts right in where the previous stock air box was, and then you're going to have to move this coolant hose to make this fit down here, and just slide that in. And then this tab here needs to go between the fan shroud mount and the radiator. So you're going to want to take this screw out here. That's going to require a 10mm socket. Okay, so once you've got this bolt out, you want to fit the heat shield right in between, work it in there right in between the fan shroud and the radiator. Watch that hose right up here when you work that in there. Put the bolt back in. Doesn't need to be super tight. Okay, so once you got that bolt in, holding the fan shroud and the heat shield in place, go ahead and put the other bolt out here. What this heat shield does is it attempts to keep the heat of the engine out of where the cold air intake is pulling air into the throttle body. The cold air intake comes with this rubber gasket that you need to fit over the throttle body. Now this one came with a narrower section of the gasket, and then there's a wider section of the gasket. The narrow section goes on the throttle body, and the wider section accepts the intake of the cold air intake. So this is a tight fit. It's actually quite difficult to get it on, so you're just gonna have to work it on, especially if it's the first time you're putting it on. Oh, there we go. Almost had it. All right, that's close enough. Looks good. It's almost centered, but good enough. So that's what it looks like when it's installed. Put your bands on, and you're going to want to make sure that the bolt is facing upwards on the side of the gasket, not on the top, and just tighten it. It doesn't need to be super tight, just hand tight. You can feel the middle for tension on the top and bottom. That's not going to come off there. Slide the other band on. So again, attach the hose on the bottom of this thing first before you put it on. And then you want to slide the intake section into the hole of the heat shield and just work it into this rubber gasket. There. That's nice. Snug. Tighten the clamp again, feel the top and bottom for tension. This one doesn't have to be too tight because you're clamping it on the plastic. Just make sure the lip of that plastic is beyond the band. And you kind of want it flush with the throttle body and opening. Yeah, just give it a couple tugs. Alright, and then take your hose. Now some people like to cut it short so that it's a tighter fit into the engine compartment, but I like the little extra room to work with when I need to take it off and reinstall the stock intake. There, and it kind of, once the engine heats up, your hose will kind of soften up and conform to that shape. Alright, last is installing the filter itself and connecting the air mass flow meter. So you can again just go ahead and connect that. Might as well do it now. Push it on. Push in the red tab. Should be on there nice and good. This might be kind of a tight fit, so it may rub up on some of your parts, other parts in the engine compartment here. You just got to remember that the nozzle end of this is at an angle to get the bottom on tilted up that way, and the top kind of tilted this way. You put the band so that the bolt is right here, so you can screw it on the outside. Gives you a nice clean look there. Okay, so just tightening it up again, hand tight, doesn't have to be too tight. This is clamping on the plastic, so alright, just make sure it's fixed nice and tight. And your cold air intake is installed. Now the last thing to do with this JLT Series 3 cold air intake is you need to get a tuner through maybe Bama or AmericanMuscle.com and get an engine tune that accepts the 110 millimeter airflow. Otherwise you might get check engine lights and it'll run too lean. So now that she's installed, let's take her out for a spin and see if the engine runs cooler. Okay, so we've been cruising around for a couple minutes now. The temperature of the cold air intake air is about 76 degrees, and we've been driving for about 5 minutes. Temperature of vehicle coolant in the vehicle is 190, so let's see if we can get that up there. When I had the stock air intake, the engine temperature was getting up to about 220, 225 degrees, and I wasn't pushing the car very hard. So the engine runs about 20 to 25 degrees, maybe even 30 degrees cooler with the cold air intake. Now I do also have a Flowmaster Outlaw axle back exhaust installed, which helps the flow of